Remember to stay hydrated, by the way.
Ah. The court will now reconvene for the trial of Miss Lana Sky.
Emma didn't come back. Allow me to call the next witness to the stand. The officer in charge of guarding the evidence room on the day of the crime. Here he is. Witness, please state your name and occupation. Me, partner? Oh, I'm just a man same as you, wandering the trails of civilization. Occasionally helping the elderly cross intersections when needed. Yes, we get it.
Oh, I know. You're a patrolman.
As for my name, if you listen hard enough, you can hear the howling wind calling it out. This fucking guy. To be exact, it's Jake Marshall, Your Honor. Howling wind. I've never heard Edgeworth described that way before. Now, Mr. Marshall, let me ask you something. You were in charge of guarding the evidence room on the day the crime took place. Is this correct? According to the papers, partner.
What do you mean?
The desperado's soul is as boundless as the desert of sands. No paper can sum it up.
Maybe it's best we get on with this quickly. Please share with us your testimony on the day of the crime. In plain old English.
My job was to keep a wary eye on that bone orchard. They said I was supposed to make rounds 3 times a day, but that ain't my style. Besides, the evidence room is detected by 2 security systems anyway. If I remember right, I was at a street-side saloon at the time it went down. I'm just an innocent traveling man, so if you're out of ammo, it's time I hit the trail.
I can't say I particularly care for your attitude.
I can't say I care for your beard, but you don't hear me complaining. Wait a minute. What did you mean by 2 security systems? I mean the security cameras and the ID card reader. I reckon even a cowpoke like you knows about those. Yes, well, what about the fingerprint-activated locks on the evidence lockers? Fingerprint-activated locks? What kind of newfangled doohickeys are those? Okay. Well, so this is important to know because that means he doesn't know that they're there. So he presumably wasn't involved in the scheme involving the locker. Because otherwise he wouldn't need to know about that, would he? He wouldn't have known to do anything to, like, hold it open. He's not being very helpful. He's not that good with machines, or with the following orders. Everyone's got their weaknesses now, don't they, Mr. Prosecutor?
This one seems like trouble. Okay, Mr. Wright, he's all yours.
How exactly did you keep an eye on the evidence room? I just made sure nothing moved in the security camera monitor. That room's so still. Even time dies in there. I was just a caretaker who inherited the recordings. Interred the recordings. You interred them? Videos of nothing aren't that useful. When the time would come, I'd erase the tape. If nothing unusual is on the recorded, tapes are to be erased every 6 hours. Each time I'd erase a tape, it felt like I was erasing a part of my life. This guy has a flair for the dramatic, but it isn't going to do him any good. So, in actuality, you don't physically enter the evidence room. But you made your rounds on the day of the crime, right? Ain't you heard a word I said, partner? I told you that ain't my style. I'm afraid I don't understand. He means he didn't fucking do it. No desperado I know lets rules get in his way. No desperados I know would join the police.
So, Officer Marshall, on the day of the crime,
just between you and me, I didn't set room in the evidence room that day.
There was a rubber glove stuck in the victim's locker. Do you know anything about that?
Sorry, partner, can't say I do. I haven't been in that crypt in weeks. How does this guy avoid being fired? Well, but like, we've got his fingerprints in there, so obviously that wasn't true, but it didn't get added to the record. Obviously he's been there, but you used to be a detective, so you've used the evidence room in the past, correct? Of course. Back in my day, the locker was a goldmine of evidence. And yet, you didn't know about the fingerprint locking mechanism. Sorry, partner, I ain't good with machines. I couldn't even tell you how a bike works. That's quite, incredible. The sensors on the locker handles cannot be seen. It's well known that some detectives are unaware of their presence. Now that he mentions it, Detective Gumshoe did say something like that.
At any rate, it doesn't seem that this is relevant to the crime. Can you tell us what you were doing when the crime took place?
What were you doing in a place like that? I was eating spaghetti. Not even Angel's steak lunches could beat that parlor's Vongoli sepia pasta.
Do you mean to tell us you abandoned your police duties to eat some noodles?
Not at all, not all desperados eat tacos, partner.
That's not what I meant. I hope this has at least taught you a lesson.
That's strange. This is usually where Edgeworth says, "Did you not want to raise this year?" Ah, fuck, I didn't, I missed the button. Out of ammo, Officer Marshall? That's right, partner. As you'd call it, evidence. If you plan to pin me to this crime, then you'd better draw. Otherwise, you're just wasting my time. My steel horse is waiting to carry me back west into the sunset.
One thing seems clear. Despite being responsible for guarding the evidence room, the witness doesn't appear to have seen anything.
Texans don't take orders from anyone. Everyone knows that. Apparently your superiors don't. Before I use it, though, I'd better set up the ante. Well... do I just slam the fingerprint right here? Seems like it has to be, right? Well, Marshall's saying that the print has been wiped. Marshall's fingerprint. Yeah. Officer Marshall, doesn't it strike you as odd? That is, you being called in to testify like this? After all, you weren't in the security room at the time of the crime. And yet you dragged me down here. Explain yourself, partner. It's quite simple. You left a very large trail behind at the scene. Or to be exact, a handprint. Listen real good, partner. Like I said, I'm the caretaker of that crypt. I pay my respects. That is, make my rounds about once a month. It's only natural my fingerprints would be in there. I only wish it were, officer. But you see, your fingerprints were covered in blood.
Witness, what's the meaning of this? Your blood-stained fingerprints were at the crime scene.
The blood was wiped away. However, a luminol test that the police apparently didn't do clearly revealed this. Well, Officer Marshall, it seems to me there ain't a person in this room with a head on his shoulders. I take it you have an explanation then, Officer Marshall, about the blood-stained fingerprints?
Very well, you may begin your testimony about your fingerprints found at the crime scene.
Like I said, it's only natural for my fingerprints to be in that evidence room. One of them just happened to be at the same place as the blood-stained handprints. The murderer touched the locker where my fingerprint was by chance. The bloodstain and the fingerprint are completely unrelated. Or didn't you know the murderer was wearing gloves? See, I had nothing to do with it. How do you know the murderer was wearing gloves? You said that so matter-of-factly, but how did you know that?
The witness's explanation appears valid, although there's room for doubt.
Life wouldn't be fun without any doubt, partner.
The defense may cross-examine the witness.
Now's my chance to prove it. Well, my thought, that part where he's like, didn't you know the killer was wearing gloves? Boy, that's a weird thing to say unless you knew what the murderer was wearing. How do you know that? I may be a loner, but I still do my job. I keep up on the reports. There was a blood stain at the scene, thought to be left by the murderer. That's right. It was found in Detective Gumshoe's locker. However, no fingerprints were detected on that handprint. Oh yeah, I think we tried that too.
So that would mean the murderer wearing gloves happened to place their hand on top of Officer Marshall's fingerprint.
That's the only logical conclusion. That's because you, how did you put it, pay your respects once a month? Yep, that's right. That and one more thing. That locker happens to be mine.
What do you mean?
I mean what I said. That's the locker I used when I was a detective, the locker I still use. Well, that thing appearing on the tape seems awfully suspect now, doesn't it? All that's in there now, though, is a heap of broken dreams.
I see.
It'd be strange if my prints weren't all over that locker. Apparently his fingerprint data was never removed from that locker's programming. He must have been using the fingerprint lock all this time without ever knowing it. Are you starting to get the picture, partner? The picture? The seal of blood in the desert, it's just food for the buzzards. There's only one reality, and that's this, the security tape. As long as my trail isn't in there, you can't say otherwise.
But it is. This isn't getting us anywhere, Wright. Please consider carefully where you're going with this cross-examination.
I'm just slamming the tape right now.
Come on, please.
Okay, I guess I'll press on it and it'll give me the chance to prove it. What do you mean by that? You want to tie me to this crime, isn't that right, partner? If so, that video is the only direct evidence you have. But that video is next to useless. It's full of blind spots.
Blind spots?
Places you can't see. The camera panning back and forth, the floor isn't shown. If someone was familiar with the camera's position, they could leave the room without being caught on tape. We don't have time for your speculations, Mr. Wright.
Well, Mr. Wright, if you can show us evidence.
Yes, I would like to. Very well. Allow me to point to your mistake, Officer Marshall. Tread carefully, Mr. Wright, or you might wind up being the one making the mistake. Alright. Oh, that's right at the fucking end of it. Ugh. Right there. Bringing our attention back to the security camera is a mistake I'm afraid you'll soon not forget, Mr. Officer Marshall. The days are short in Texas, and so are our tempers. Could you sum up what you have to say in 8 words or less? Very well. You can clearly be seen in this video. Exactly 8 words. Not bad, partner. The key lies in a certain locker shown in the video.
That locker with the white cloth sticking out. That was the witnesses, I believe.
Now then, let's rewind the video a bit.
Oh, the white cloth. It's gone. What's the meaning of this, Officer Marshall?
When the crime took place, the white cloth wasn't there. Then it suddenly appeared. There's only one explanation. Officer Marshall, you were in the evidence room at the scene at the time of the crime. What's more, you opened your locker when the camera was turned away.
Order, order. It would seem that's the only...
Hold your horses. Sorry, partner, but you got the wrong man. So what if my locker was opened? That doesn't mean I'm the one who opened it. This is so transparently, like, come on. don't make me present evidence for this. I'm begging you. It's so unnecessary to make me do it. The murderer needed to hide something, so he opened a locker and stuck it in. It's not my fault he happened to choose mine. Why is everyone staring at me like I'm a wanted man? This guy isn't just playing dumb. He really doesn't know. Oh, I hate to rain on your parade, but you're the only person who can open that particular locker. Oh yeah? I call your bluff. Okay. How unnecessary. Fingerprint sensor. We talked about this earlier today. Alright, so I think I've got the picture on this now. Goodman has to have opened the locker at some point to have put the thing in there blocking the sensor, right? So, Goodman and Marshall were both involved in the SL9, right? Jake Marshall was one of the investigators. Yes. Angel pretty much told us that this case was fucked up and they were still investigating it anyway. She was anyway. I assume the others were also involved. And so, therefore, Goodman, it was going into evidence transferal that day. So Goodman opened the locker, held it open, and then told Jake to go back for it later. And Jake just didn't know that they were that's how the lockers worked. Because Goodman has to have opened it. So then the question has to be, well, why did Jake go there? And it seems like it has to be because Goodman sent him to collect something, right? That makes sense to me. I don't know if I explain that in a sensical way, but it makes sense to me. I think I understand. We talked about this earlier today. The lockers can only be opened by the detectives they belong to. What kind of crazy talk is this? Well, Detective Gumshoe did mention something about that. Yeah. So, Sheriff, I find this really hard to accept, though, as far as premises go, that, like, you could open these lockers without knowing that the fingerprint lock is there. They must be fucking huge sensors, mustn't they? If you could just accidentally open it with your fingerprint. Because, you know, whenever I've used a fucking fingerprint scanner before, I had to hold my finger pretty specifically on the spot. Anyway, what do you have to say in 8 words or less? I only got 1 word for you, partner. No! God, well, that was an excellent rebuttal, that one.
Order, order, order. Witness, explain yourself.
If this is a joke, it's the worst I've ever heard. I assure you this is no joke, Officer Marshall. Now then, please tell us what you were doing in the evidence room at the time of the crime.
Olay, please answer the question.
What is he now, bullfighter? That's right, all right, Officer Marshall. I believe we can figure the rest out from here.
We can?
Let's have a look at these floor plans. There's no place for someone to hide in the evidence room. Yet Officer Meekins didn't see Officer Marshall.
If that's so, then where was the witness?
It seems Mr. Wright has an answer. That's right, the only possible conclusion.
Well then, let's hear it. Where was Officer Marshall at the time of the crime?
It's right there. No, I've clicked on killer. I clicked on the wrong. I clicked on the killer. I should have been clicking on the victim. I'm a fool. I got my wires crossed. It's okay. Officer Marshall was standing right here.
There, but that's where the victim, Detective Goodman, was.
Correct, unless the man wasn't Detective Goodman. As I feel like we've established. I believe the victim in the video is Officer Marshall. It was you dressed up like Detective Goodman. But that's preposterous. Officer Meekin was witness the detective at the crime scene. Once he saw the man's face, he'd know for sure. Not if he didn't know. May I point out, though, that Officer Meekins did not know Detective Goodman. He also testified about the man's reaction when confronted. He refused to show his card. Yeah, because he didn't look the same as the man. Something about the officer's story puzzled me. If the man had his ID card, why didn't he just show it?
Yes, he would have needed it to enter the evidence room, so he must have been carrying it.
I don't know how it's taken you all so long to arrive at this conclusion. Yes, obviously his picture is different. The answer is simple. He couldn't show it. As you can see, Detective Goodman's picture is on his ID card.
Oh, I get it.
If he showed that, his cover would be blown. Officer Meekins would have realized the man wasn't Detective Goodman. Do you have anything to say to this, Officer Marshall? You got quite an imagination, partner. We got a term for that. It's called circumstantial evidence. I mean, all evidence... Anyway. You're gonna have to do better than that to break a detective, unless you have hard evidence proving I dressed up as the victim.
I can't say I particularly care for your uncooperative disposition.
I can't say I care for your beard, but you don't see me complaining.
Well, Mr. Wright, do you have any evidence showing beyond a shadow of a doubt that Officer Marshall dressed up as the victim?
Well, who am I kidding? I don't have anything like that. I can see the fear in your eyes, partner. Seems like you're the one who couldn't take the desert heat. This can't be happening. It's so obvious he's the one. What can I do? It looks like your lack of experience has finally been exposed. I'll pass on to you what someone told me when I was just starting out. When you've run into a wall with no place to go, return to the basics. The basics. For me, that would be what Mia used to tell me. Phoenix, try thinking outside the box. I should look for proof that Officer Marshall was in disguise. But rather, I should look for evidence that came about because he was in disguise. Why do you think this locker was opened in the first place?
What do you mean?
There's no reason for Officer Marshall to open his locker at the time of the crime. Yet he did, despite the chance it might be discovered later, as it has been. Which means he didn't originally plan to open his locker.
According to the defense's argument, Officer Jake Marshall dressed up as Detective Goodman at the time of the crime. Then, after the crime was committed, he opened his own locker for some unknown reason.
The fact that a white cloth is sticking out of the locker seems to indicate that. He opened it in order to put the cloth inside.
So, just exactly what is this piece of cloth?
Perhaps the videotape is the key to all our unanswered questions. I don't have any evidence, so this tape's my only shot.
Let's take another look at the security tape. After committing the crime, the witness opened the locker to put away the white cloth. Please show us why.
It's because he had blood on him. This is, of course, right near the end of the tape. Oh, wait, back it up, that's where it was. Fuck. Behold. For some reason, you disguised yourself as Detective Goodman and entered the evidence room, though I don't know to what end, yet. However, something unexpected happened. Officer Meekins barged in on you. When asked to show your ID card, you pulled a knife on him. However, Officer Meekins panicked, and the white cloth you were wearing was soiled with blood.
A bloody white coat.
You couldn't just walk out like that, so you hid the coat in your locker. Not bad, partner. But here's the thing, though. He wanted hard evidence that it was him in disguise. That evidence was no harder than the fact that he opened his locker. Was it? Like, the fact he had blood on his coat seems less important than the fact that we can clearly see the locker was opened in the span of the tape. How does the blood suddenly turn that into hard evidence? It's the same thing. We still haven't shown, like, proof, hard proof, quote unquote. It's the same type of proof as the fact the locker was opened. And the locker opening seems way more compelling to me because it's a fucking fingerprint lock.
Now then, Officer Marshall, are you ready to tell us the truth?
Looks like I underestimated you all. I hope you're happy now, Mr. Edgeworth. I don't really care that he accepted it, because as far as I'm concerned, the locker ID, the fucking fingerprint reader should have been a slam dunk anyway, but this evidence is the exact same type of evidence as that. 2 years ago, if you were only half as persistent then as you are today, we all wouldn't have to be here now, would we? Officer Marshall, tell the court what you did, all of it. All right. It seems the time has come. I had to do it that day. I couldn't just stand by and let it die. I stole the detective's ID and dressed him like him. I planned to take out the evidence. I wasn't expecting Officer Meekins. I knocked him out and managed to escape. I knew which areas couldn't be caught on the camera. There wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15.
Well, but... Alright, so you stole his ID.
The locker still has to have been opened.
Well, okay, so what? Is he trying to deny the fact that Goodman was a part of the plan? Or was the locker being held open by sheer chance? Because my assumption was that Goodman told him to go and get it. For what reason, I don't know yet. But if he stole the ID from Goodman, as he said, then there wasn't a plan like I thought. So it was just open by sheer chance? Weird. So the supposed victim was really you.
But there's one thing I still don't understand. Traces of a large quantity of blood were found on the floor of the evidence room. If no one was murdered, then how could that be? Officer Meekins managed to cut his own hands. My guess is he's the donor. It was way too much blood for such a small donation. I've got it. When Marshall opened the locker, he was murdered. Because he still has to have died in the evidence room for all that blood to be there. So, and that helps with the keycard reader. Because we know that this Bruce Goodman was not Goodman. But he still died in the evidence room. So he has to have entered with one of the previous ones and been murdered then, doesn't he? It wasn't Edgeworth and it wasn't Meekins that murdered him. So it's whoever this 77777 is. Their card opened it, they went in with Goodman, then killed him when he opened the locker. Now, I'm pretty sure this is Gant. So I'm going to proceed under this assumption that it's Gant for now. Okay, here's what I think. I think Goodman went in with Gant. Goodman opened the locker. Gant killed Goodman. Gant then proceeded to hold the locker open with the glove and told Lana to collect whatever was in the locker. Then, somehow in here, Goodman's body has to have been transported to the prosecutor's office. Don't know about that one yet. Though the fact he was in Edgeworth's trunk makes me think he was in Edgeworth's car. But I don't know about all that. But I think it was Gant. Because I'm just sure it's Gant that killed him. But then he has to have needed a reason. There needs to have been a reason he held the locker open rather than just taking whatever was in the locker at the time. Which logically means someone else has to have gone and collected it. Because otherwise there'd be no reason Gant couldn't just take it at the time. And since Lana's the victim, she's being set up by Gant. Or Lana's the alleged killer, she's being set up by Gant. For some reason or another. That's what I think happened. I don't know any of the surrounding context, but based off the fact Gant seems super fucking evil, I think it was him. Also, surely chief of the whole chief of detectives, or of police rather. Seems like the sort of job that would have a very special ID number attached to it. Anyway, that's what I think's going on. For some reason or another, I don't fucking know about the surrounding context. It was way too much blood for such a small donation. I had to do it that day. I'm just gonna press on everything. When you say it, you mean... Do you even have to ask, partner? The SL9 incident. 2 years have passed since that case was closed. It was going to be completely end with the transferal that day. Not if I have anything to do with it. That incident's not over. But what did you hope to accomplish by sneaking into the evidence room? When a case is closed, only that case's lead detective can look through the evidence. I wanted to have a look at it myself one more time, no matter what the cost. I don't care what anyone says, partner, that case is mine.
Oh, but I say that. I said all that about Lana going back to get it, but... But Marshall went and opened it. Because we know now it was Marshall that was on the camera. So then Lana can't have been sent back to collect it, could she? Unless I guess maybe she did and she just couldn't open it. Jake doing this was just by sheer chance and it happened to throw a wrench into things. Officer Marshall wasn't in charge of that investigation. Why does he care about it so much? Well, he was involved and his relative of some description died in it. That day was it was a guy, so it was either like his brother or his father. That day was my last chance. That's why Why did you disguise yourself as Detective Goodman? If I didn't make it look like Goodman was carrying out the evidence transferal, I'd be arrested for stealing evidence, which wouldn't get me anywhere. Why wouldn't you just erase the tape? So you did it to fool the security camera. And the detective's ID card? So, why, you're the guy that's in charge of the cameras. Why did you need to do it to fool the cameras? You could have just deleted the footage after you did it. You know, if it was just for the camera's sake, you're in control of deleting the footage. Whatever. I stole that the morning of the incident. So that really was why Goodman started filling out that lost item report. I returned his ID card. I left it on the floor in the prosecutor's office's parking lot. The ID card I found was left there by Officer Marshall. So essentially you managed to succeed despite your lack of foresight. What do you mean, partner? I mean the fingerprint-activated lock, of course. No matter how well you disguise yourself, you can't change your fingerprints. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't have been able to open that locker yourself. But he could because a rubber glove just happened to get stuck in the door. That means Detective Goodman must have opened the locker before Officer Marshall. You pulled a knife on Officer Meekins and tried to drive him off? Let's just say I was a little surprised. I only planned on being on the evidence room for no more than 5 minutes. I didn't think anyone would actually come in during that short time. Officer Meekins certainly is a 1 in a million type of person. Mistaking a detective for an intruder and demanding to be shown his ID. I'll have to think a little more about his raise this year. When did Edgeworth get so much influence? Anyway, he threw himself at me and I ended up cutting him slightly. Sorry it had to turn out that way. With me knocking him out and everything. By the way, what happened to your knife? Oh, you mean this one? I don't know what to say. So you knocked Officer Meekins out and... So you did your research beforehand. Those who go into the desert unprepared don't live long, partner.
I didn't think it would make a difference, though. The security tape is erased every 6 hours. If it had all gone as planned, no footage would have been left. However, you bloodied your coat in the struggle with Officer Meekins. If someone was in the security room when I came out, the jig would have been up. I opened my locker and stashed it in there. What was Officer Meekins doing during that time? What else? He was sleeping like a baby.
So what you're saying is, on that day,
there wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15. I didn't mean to click through that. But the blood found at the crime scene certainly indicates a crime took place. What are you, blind? The victim is shown on the tape as me, and I'm not dead yet, partner. So you stole the evidence from the locker. Actually, no, I didn't. He did take it at the time. Why not? When I opened the locker, the evidence was already gone. But that's even more perplexing. So then why was the glove holding it open? By sheer accident? Because if it was held open by the glove, I assume that to have been intentional. But why would it have been held open if the locker was already empty? So somebody could go back and put something in it? Or just sheer accident that they dropped the glove and it happened to block it?
Mr. Edgeworth, where is that evidence?
It's still missing, Your Honor. Detective Goodman's locker was already empty. Someone else stole the evidence. Officer Marshall, may I ask you one thing? Fire away, pardon. It's a free country. Just remember, I'm also free to decide whether or not to answer. So why did you do this? Stealing a detective's ID, injuring a police officer, this is no small offense. Moreover, you're an officer yourself. This will have serious consequences. It can't just be forgiven with a simple cut in salary. Not that salary cuts are ever a valid solution. Like I said, this isn't your case, this one is mine. And I'll do anything it takes to get an answer I'm satisfied with.
The witness has an unusual amount of zeal. Let's hear more.
Look, I'm slamming the SL9 right here. Yes, I do know why. Officer Marshall, I think I understand. I think I know why you care so much about the SL9 incident. Sounds like you've been sipping too much cactus juice, partner. I have the SL9 incident file here. The name Marshall is mentioned in here. In a list of murder victims. Neil Marshall. Are you related to this man? Neil Marshall. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard the name. 2 years ago. Well, that looked different. He received the same lousy prosecutor award you got.
What? A prosecutor?
I didn't get a good look at it, but the trophy didn't look the same as we saw it. They must be talking about the King of Prosecutors Award. Now I remember. Prosecutor Neil Marshall. He handled the SL9 case before I did. That's right. He was killed. And the case fell into your hands.
But what's his relation to you?
He was my brother. He was investigating the murders with Damon Gant, the then deputy chief of police. The group of detectives I was part of worked under them. We were desperate to prosecute the killer. Oh my god! Look at this guy! Holy shit! Joe Dark. My brother fought Dark and was killed. That was the first time Dark left behind any evidence. That was all we needed. He was arraigned and incarcerated. The case was finally closed, at least according to the public records.
What do you mean?
My brother couldn't have been killed by Joe Dark. I knew my brother better than anyone. No one could have beaten him in a fight. And that's it? That's your reason for your insane actions? There's more to my brother's death than what the records say. No matter how much you try to hide it, you can't fool me.
Well, at least one thing's for certain. Now we know what happened at the police department on the day of the crime.
That was the last day of the SL9 case could be reopened. Not satisfied with its resolution, Officer Marshall planned to steal the evidence. Disguising himself as Detective Goodman, he entered the evidence room. Officer Meekins confronted him, so he rendered him unconscious and fled. Yes, this mystery has finally been cleared up. Now, unfortunately, while it's great that we've solved this part of the mystery, we have done nothing to prove that Lana isn't the murderer. But we have proved Meekins isn't a murderer, so that's something. No murder took place at the police department that day. Incorrect. The things that happen by chance never cease to amaze. At exactly the same time as the murder at the prosecutor's office, this fake murder was going on at the police department. Chance? It's gotta be more than just that.
So if no one was murdered at the police department on the day of the crime, that means the murder in the prosecutor's office parking lot was the real one.
Which in turn means only one person could have committed the crime. Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye. But wait, a verdict wasn't reached in yesterday's trial. Which is why we examined the incident at the police department today. But there's only one reason the defendant was not convicted yesterday. There yet remained the mystery of the simultaneous murder at the police department. It seems to me this boy's got the draw on you, partner. All of the mysteries at the police department have been resolved, no doubt about it. Not really, it's just no one's talked about the mysteries I have yet. Our sole murder took place at the prosecutor's office. The only suspect is Lana Skye, and the testimony of one Angel Star is completely incontestable. If you have a response, make it a single word or less.
Arr!
I rest my case.
It seems this trial has reached its conclusion. There's no room for doubt.
Well done, Mr. Wright. Thanks to you, I didn't need to waste my time disproving the alleged murder at the police department. There's no doubt what I proved today is true. The apparent murder on the security tapes really was fake, but I didn't realize that would end up proving Lana guilty.
Now then, the time for the verdict has arrived. This court finds the defendant...
Your Honor, wait. Emma. The defense has an objection, a scientific objection. Right? What do you mean, right?
Mr. Wright, are you this girl's guardian?
Your Honor? Oh, in a sense. Please, Your Honor. All I'm asking for is a minute of your time. Please hear me out. Mr. Edgeworth, please. I don't want to leave any loose ends. You want a minute? I'll give you 3. I was kind of in shock. I mean, finding out the SL9 incident referred to the Joe Dark killings. Now that she mentions it, the name of both Sky sisters were in that file. But that's when I figured it out. I mean, what Officer Marshall was trying to do that day. So I knew his fingerprint had nothing to do with the crime. That left only one thing, the other handprint. You mean the traces of blood found on Detective Gumshoe's locker.
But no fingerprints were found on it, right?
No, but I figured if I examine it scientifically, I'm sure to find a clue. So I ran over there and looked at it again. So did you find something? No. Huh? Sorry, I guess I'm not much of a scientific investigator after all. Is that all? Please don't be mad. I'm just a high school student. And I'm just... Well... No. Right. So... the blood was wiped off of Marshall's locker. But it wasn't wiped off of the other locker. Why did he only wipe the blood off of one of the lockers? But Mr. Wright, those traces of blood are the only clue we have. If we can't find something wrong with them... Please, Mr. Wright, you're a professional. If anyone can save Lana, it's you. Me? Oh boy.
Time's up now then, Mr. Wright. With regard to the incident at the police department, does any reasonable doubt remain?
It appears the defense is troubled by the other blood mark. Looking at the floor plans, a handprint was discovered around here. Is there a problem with this? Mr. Wright, I'm sorry I can't be of more use, but still, if you can find anything wrong with that blood mark, Lana will be...
Please answer my question, Mr. Wright. We don't have all day.
Yes, Your Honor. If ever I needed to concentrate, it's now. What could be wrong with that handprint on Detective Gumshoe's locker? Could there be something I'm missing? I object. This handprint left at the crime scene clearly shows a contradiction. The only thing that's clear is your grasping, Mr. Wright.
You've been staring pretty intently at those floor plans. Tell me, is there a problem with them?
Yes, this is strange. Take a good look at these floor plans. Something is missing. Missing? You mean something hasn't been drawn on there yet? Yes, something that when drawn will completely change the meaning of the blood mark.
Let us pray the defense isn't trying to buy time. Very well, Mr. Wright.
There's got to be something I can use. It's the blue badger. Because we actually can't see when that blood stain appeared. And it is also strange that it exists at all when the other one was wiped off. Now, don't look at the fucking blue badger. What about that piece of plywood? The blue badger, mascot of the police force, defender of truth, guardian of proof. Explain yourself, Mr. Wright. Please look at the floor plans of the crime scene. The blue badger is not here. So watch what happens when we put him in. This is where he was dancing at the time of the crime. Well,
what?
Gasp! That's right. So long as the blue badger is dancing here, it would be impossible to place a handprint at this spot on the locker. What? I don't necessarily agree, but as long as it gets me to the same conclusion.
So that means, just what exactly does that mean?
It means it can't be done.
What are you saying? Blood traces were undeniably found on that locker.
Don't look at me, I didn't put it there. Mr. Wright, think it through scientifically. Emma, on that afternoon, Officer Meekins was the one who brought the blue badger to the evidence room, right? After he put it down, it would be impossible to leave a handprint on that locker. That means this blood mark was left before the blue badger was brought in, and Meekins didn't notice a fucking blood stain right next to where he put it.
Just one moment, I will not allow such far-fetched balderdash to my courtroom.
It may sound far-fetched, Your Honor, but it's the only possible explanation. On February 21st in the police department's evidence room, blood was spilled not once, but twice. But how? One time was captured on this tape, taken by the security camera. Officer Meekins cut his hand, from which a trivial amount of blood fell. The problem is the other time. Someone bled prior to the struggle shown on this tape. It had to have been Detective Goodman when he was really murdered. That's ridiculous. I refuse to accept your absurd claim. The murder portrayed in the security tape has been proven to be a fake. However, that does not explain the blood mark found on the locker. So then, assuming this murder you purport really happened, when did it take place? I demand you show evidence that proves when it occurred. When did the first incident occur?
To summarize, the defense claims that prior to Officer Meekins being cut by Jake Marshall, who was posing as Detective Goodman, another incident took place in that room.
That's right, the blood mark on the locker proves this.
Very well, then tell us, when did this first incident occur? As Mr. Edgeworth said, proof must be presented.
Proof that shows when the murder took place. There's only one piece of evidence that can show that. It's gotta be the chart, right? The spreadsheet. All the IDs it entered. If the crime took place in the evidence room, then the killer would have had to enter it. And in order to do so, an ID card would have been required.
An ID card? Oh, the ID card record.
Officer Meekins brought the blue badger panel into the evidence room at,
let's see here, 4:50.
if the crime took place before that,
Then it would be 4:40 p.m.
or 4:20 p.m.
Mr. Edgeworth, just what have you done?
I never would have figured you had the nerve, boy. Drop the act, witness. It doesn't take a lot of thought to figure out it couldn't have been me. Nope, I ain't getting it.
I'm afraid I don't understand either.
It's clear from the luminol test that blood was there. However, when the second crime took place, both Officer Meekins and Officer Marshall failed to notice the blood. That means the blood from the first crime was wiped away by the real murderer. I would have had just but 10 minutes to murder the victim, carry his body away, and clean up the blood. Unfortunately, that's physically impossible.
That would mean the crime must have taken place before Mr. Edgeworth entered the evidence room.
Let's take a look at the chart again.
There's only one other card number remaining, 7777777.
Talk about a lucky number.
But wait, that doesn't make sense. How could Detective Goodman have entered the evidence room?
Since there's no record of his card being used beforehand, he must have entered along with the real murderer. That's the only plausible explanation. He went in with 7777777.
Mr. Edgeworth, please look into this ASAP. Find out whose ID number is 7777777.
That's 17 too many, Your Honor. Unfortunately, I'm unable to look up the owner of that ID card, at least at present. What? Explain yourself, son. The ID number 777777 belongs to someone with a rank of captain or higher. Oh, maybe Damon Gant. Someone who is a so-called executive officer. We don't have the authority to inquire into such a person's identity. I feel like that's kind of fucked up. That's ridiculous, just how... I'm not finished talking, Mr. Wright. There is one situation in which we can be granted such authority.
If an official charge filed against an executive is accepted.
An official charge. You're all alike, aren't you? With your cover-ups and your forgeries. That's how the prosecutor's office operates. I take pride in my work, Officer Marshall. I would appreciate it if you would keep your slander to yourself. Slander, is it? Okay, let me ask you a question. Yes. No, not to you. To her, the defendant sitting over there. Your own little executive. Lana? Don't be stupid. She's been charged with murder. Of course we've looked up her ID number, and it's not 77777. Don't play me for a fool, partner. That's not what I want to ask. All I want to know is one thing about that incident.
The SL9 incident?
Answer me this, Chief Prosecutor. In that trial 2 years ago, did you really only use legitimate evidence? Do you need the witness to repeat his question, Chief Prosecutor? I heard him fine, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago, I was in charge of the prosecution for that trial. At the time, we felt the powerlessness of the law. At least, I did. Lana, I became a prosecutor in order to suppress crime with the law. But before I realized it, we were the ones being suppressed by the law.
Defendant, just what are you saying?
I'll ask you again, Chief Prosecutor. During that trial 2 years ago, did you really present all the evidence in court? Can you look me, an investigator in that crime, in the eye and say that you did?
Chief Prosecutor, you didn't.
I don't have to, Officer Marshall. Why won't you answer him? Drastic crimes require drastic measures. That's just the way it is. We did what we had to in order for him to get the verdict he deserved.
But Lana...
Even if it involved forging evidence. See, that's what I'm talking about. No. No!
Order, 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 order!
Lana's remark caused such a stir. The chaos in the courtroom could not be quelled. Whoops. We would have to wait till the following day. Well, you know, I'm not surprised. But I am disappointed.